Hi, Eric, it's John.
Hey, John. Sorry,
Eric,
I didn't hear you, or I wasn't able to contact you. Why is there feedback? There we go. That should fix that.
yeah, you're loud and clear from my end.
Cool. Doug, do you want to run the meeting or whatever to where you want to like have all the controls and stuff? Right now, it's just like me through the VPN.
No, you can. I also signed in as the town and then just changed my name,
Okay.
but it's fine. You can. I don't know if it'll let me. No, I think you're listed as the host. So. Hey, Eric, you're gonna go through, I'm just pulling up the agenda. Sorry, I'm like doing too many things at one time here. You're gonna go through the referrals and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah.
All right. It's been a while since I've been at an ECB meeting, so.
And it's got to be a few years now, right?
Yep. Oh, by the way, Mr. Robitella, happy birthday.
Thank you, Doug.
Happy birthday, John.
That
Too
should
many
be our
years
first,
now, I try to avoid them.
that should be our first order of business, singing happy birthday to John. Oh, and good, we're recording this. Perfect.
Oh, God.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you all?
Hi, Pat. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Hi, Pat.
Hey, John. There's my favorite new Buffalonian.
Yeah. We're out in
Go
Buffalo right
Bills.
now. The Browns are pretty much wiped out from COVID, so I'll have to root for the Bills.
Oh, no. That darn bug is hitting everybody. Well, a lot of people, not everybody.
Worst time. Put them in a bubble. Hey, John,
Yeah,
did you email out the rules of procedure by chance?
probably at the end of the last meeting. Want me to send them again?
It was attached. I'm actually pulled up that email, John, that you already sent. It was attached in there. I was just looking at it.
What was the date of that one, do you know?
Is Monday. Here, I'll forward it to you.
Oh, this past Monday.
I didn't receive any changes from anyone, so maybe they're pretty good.
Okay, yeah, I see it now.
The one I have is from January of 19. Is that right?
No, the one John sent out says approved January 2nd, 2020 on the top of it.
No, 2020. Well, I have an old one then.
I'm sure it didn't change much.
Yeah.
So I have official members are Justin, Sarah Linda, Pat, Edith, and Gary. And with
Right.
officially we have 2 vacancies, right? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Gary. Happy New Year.
Hello, Gary.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Are we going to get some sunshine this week?
It's been awful dreary, hasn't it?
Isn't it incredible?
Yeah.
I put in solar panels a few months ago, and I've generated enough electricity for about 3 20-watt light bulbs, I think.
Looks like everybody's joining us now.
Yeah.
Hi, Edith. Hi, Sarah Linda.
Oh.
I think we're missing, there's Rocky. I think we're missing Justin. Looks like the only
Yeah.
one.
Oh, he just joined us.
Justin's joining us, you said?
Yep.
All right, well, it's 4:30. Let's go ahead and get started and we'll get everybody going. does anybody, actually, you know what, I keep a flag on my computer. Let me see if I can pull that up.
Here, I usually actually pull it up on
Perfect.
YouTube.
Yay.
Awesome. All right. So let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Eric, you want to lead us, since this is your last official meeting as the town planner?
Sure. All right. Well, I pledge allegiance to
I
the
pledge
flag
allegiance to the
United
flag
States
of
of
the
America,
United States of America,
To the
and
to the
republic,
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
Seems very
Perfect.
poignant after yesterday.
All right. So thank you, Eric. So for those of you that don't know, congratulations, Eric. Eric is the new City of Niagara Falls planner. So congratulations, Eric. We're super excited for you. It's an awesome opportunity.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes, and we will miss you.
Yes, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thankfully, it won't be a hard stop. I'll stay on part-time for a little while, though I'm not sure
Okay,
how much
good.
I'll see everybody.
Yes, thankfully. I'm very thankful for that. Thank you, Eric.
Mhm.
As we go through a couple of transitions here, and then some of you may know or may not know Samantha Pierce, who's been with the town for 6-7 years now. She's also transitioning over to become the new Village of Perry administrator. So two great opportunities for both of you. So awesome. So we have Rocky Palomini joining us, and before we get into, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead on the agenda. So we'll introduce you, Rocky, and then we'll come back and have a conversation with you in a minute. So we'll stick to the agenda so I don't miss anything. So thank you, John, for putting that all together. So let's, per the organizational meeting, since this is an organizational meeting for 2021, we should go ahead and adopt the rules of procedure for 21. So I don't know if anybody had any changes to the rules of procedure. Is there anything anybody wanted to talk about the rules of procedure? The one thing that I think that, Eric, is there a section on here regarding remote participation? I believe in the... No.
I don't know.
We might want to add that in here. We've got some standard language that we use for the planning board as well as the town board is adopted, especially in light of the executive orders that are in place allowing us to participate remotely. So we might want to just amend that and add that section on remote meeting participation. And Eric's so good, he's going to pull up the planning board section. I can tell what he's doing here. So there you go. There's the remote attendance. Eric, do you just want to touch on that real quick there?
Sure, sorry, stuff's in the way. So it'd be pretty easy to add just this brief note and then the exhibit at the end, which is, it's worked pretty well for us as far as, if you're attending remotely, you'll have to give notice to the chairperson and the secretary. It should be advertised, and where you participate from is supposed to be a public setting. I think that that's not really been the case this year, as far as it having to be in a public setting, but that's generally the gist of it. And then there has to be a certain number of people there, not remotely, so quorum, physically present, for you to go in remotely. So it can't just be all remote, again, with the exception of kind of how we're operating right now.
And we're able to operate this way right now due to the executive orders that have been issued by the governor.
Right.
And also by order of the town board, actually. So. Yeah. So then maybe, Eric, could you show us the little piece that's in the planning board's rules of procedure again then? So remote participation in, so we could actually say remote participation in environmental conservation board meetings shall be conducted according to the board's remote attendance policy. Maybe we should also add in or as directed by either executive order or the town board of the town of Canandaigua, and then attach it. If that seems reasonable to everybody.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So if you are in agreement, if we could have a motion to adopt the 21 rules of procedure with that amendment.
So move. Edith.
Edith
Yep.
moved it. Do we have a second?
I'll second Pat Venezia, second.
Any other discussion on the adopting the rules of procedure for 21? No? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so we've adopted the rules of procedure. So then we need to, and I know we kind of jumped ahead there as we were talking about that. Then we need to have the election of a recording secretary. I know that we're supposed to elect a vice chair. Let's just take them one at a time. Do we have anyone who's willing to be the secretary? I know that John has been a fantastic secretary for all of our different boards, but I also know that John doesn't want to do this for the whole year of 21. So, you know, John, if you're willing to do it for us as we go through the transition, I know that's kind of what we had talked about. And then maybe as we find someone, we can revisit that if that's.
Yeah, that's fine. And Sarah Reynolds has advertised for the position. So no problem at all for me to stay until a new person comes on.
Perfect.
Super.
Are the board members in agreement with appointing John as the secretary, at least a temporary secretary for the Environmental Conservation Board?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, so let's go ahead and have a motion to appoint John Robitella as the recording secretary for the Environmental Conservation Board, please.
So moved, Sarah Linda.
And a second.
Second, Edith.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, congratulations, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
One of the things I don't know with, obviously you're going to be going through some transitions here. You know, I've been appointed by the town board to act as your temporary facilitator just to help keep you going. We're going to need to find a chair, and we've got 2 vacancies on the Environmental Conservation Board. It's really your call. Would you like to address the issue of a vice chair for the time being, or would you rather hold off? And just wanted to touch base with you. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments on that?
So even in the event of them choosing a vice chair, you would still act as a facilitator of the meeting?
Yeah,
As
because
opposed to
the
the
town,
vice chair doing it?
right, because the town board has to appoint the chairperson. So if somebody'd be willing or interested in serving as the vice chair, that it's certainly, now's a good time to chat about it. If you want to just wait as we go through interviews and we kind of see how things play out over the next couple of months, that's okay too. Does anybody have a preference or any thoughts or comments? Or
My suggestion is that we defer it pending more information on filling the position, the open positions.
okay. Anybody else have any thoughts?
It seems reasonable.
Okay. All right.
I
So-
agree as well.
Okay. All right, well, we don't need a motion. If you'd like to make a motion regarding that position, now would be a good time for that. But if we're just going to defer it, we'll just go ahead and table that for now, and we'll address that at a later time. So, item C here, the establishment of the date and time for regular meetings for each month of the calendar year. So obviously, you know that they've been the first Thursday of the month at 4:30. Does that work for everybody? Now would be a good time to revisit that. If that doesn't work for you, if you'd like to consider a different time, now would be a good time to do that. But, and again, I'll open it up for discussion.
I think we should keep it. It's been that way for so very long. My opinion.
I think it's something that we might leave as an open question pending finding candidates who are interested in filling the open positions. Because if it turns out that this time means that somebody who otherwise would be interested can't do it, you know, maybe we could modify it from 4:30 to 5, let's say, if that would make a difference. So I would suggest that we leave it where it is for now, but you know, be willing to entertain a change if necessary in filling the positions.
Good.
Gary, did you have any thoughts on that?
I think keeping the current schedule works for me, but I agree with Sarah Linda. If we had a member or a new chair who needed a different time, we should be flexible in considering that.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, let's just leave it for now then. We'll just defer this, and so we'll just keep the meetings at 4:30 on the first Thursday of the month, and then we'll take some formal action after we fill those vacant positions and establish your officers for you. So the rules of procedure, we just took care of that. Any standing committees? I'm going to make an assumption here that in the same thing for standing committees, you stop me or correct me if I'm wrong, or if you want to talk about it, but in terms of standing committees, perhaps you just keep that as an open item and then come back and address that after things are more formalized in terms of the process for 21. So, all right. So what's under that, Eric? The next section there. Is there anything else on the organizational items that we need to address there? Was there anything under E? I just didn't know if there was anything under E or not. Okay. All right. Okay. So then that will conclude our organizational items for the time being, with some open items that we'll address at a later time. So with that, then we'll move into the next item on the agenda for today. We have joining us Rocky Palomini. I know I sent out the email and John had forwarded it to you, I believe. Rocky has applied for one of the vacant positions on the Environmental Conservation Board. And what I thought is we'd just take a few moments and chat with him. And Rocky, you're certainly welcome to participate. This is a public meeting. You're welcome to stay for the whole meeting and listen in. Maybe at the very end of the meeting, we might go into executive session just to discuss, your interest level at the end of the meeting. But for the meantime, you're welcome to stay for the whole meeting. And maybe we'll just take a moment here and hear from you, Rocky, about maybe your background, a little bit about who you are and why you are interested in joining the Environmental Conservation Board.
All right, thank you. So can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Rocky Palomini. I was born in Canandaigua. I've lived here my whole life. I've lived in the town for as long as I can remember. I went to Nazareth College for my undergrad. I went to UB for law school, and I found out a week ago that I passed the bar and I'll be admitted hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Congratulations, Rocky. Good
Thank
for
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good for you.
Yes.
Yeah. It was a long road, but we made it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've been in the town forever, and it's been an interest of mine to get involved, and this is the perfect opportunity.
And let's open it up to the board members if you have questions for Rocky. Rocky, could you as they're thinking about questions, you and I talked briefly. I believe you've also been doing some environmental work for Ontario County. Could you just touch on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, I've done internships with the county before, and they did involve some light environmental work, but I've also done mostly environmental ADR at UB Law, and I've taken environmental classes in both high school through law school. So
And what were some of the responsibilities? You did some state environmental quality reviews, the seeker type stuff?
For which part? For just with the
With the
county?
county?
Yeah, but
Yeah, I basically worked with, I wrote letters asking about, regulation stuff. But, yeah, most of my environmental work was in law school though, centering around dispute resolution.
do you have a particular area of environmental concern that you're more interested in than others? Since it's such a broad field, everything from recycling to development to, whatever. Is there something that particularly captures your attention?
I don't know if it's a concern, but I've always been interested in water quality and
Mhm.
stuff like that. I don't know if anyone's on Westlake. I run on Westlake during the summer up until it gets, freezing. Like right now, I'm down by the lake maybe 2-3 times a week. So it's a big part of my life.
Thank you.
Other questions? Let's just take a moment, open it up to the board members. Other questions or comments or thoughts or things you'd like to talk to or ask Rocky about?
Well, Rocky,
Well,
you
I
probably
think,
have picked up on the fact that we're operating without a chairman at the moment. Is there any possibility you'd consider moving in and becoming our chairman?
I mean,
Not to put
Yeah,
any
well.
pressure on you.
Not to put you on. Yes.
I mean, I would be interested, yeah.
Be careful what you sign up for. Yeah, I think sitting in on the meeting today and maybe even next month to get a better sense of what goes on in the committee. I'm the newest member. I guess I've been on almost a year now, or maybe a little more. But I was really not that aware of all that went on before I joined the board. And there is a skill set that I don't possess, but some of the members brought to the board when they joined and have acquired over time. That is something that you need to develop in terms of doing the reviews, which is a big part of the activities of the board, the property reviews. Yeah, I think having interest in the environment and in conservation is an important requisite to be on this group, I think.
Rocky, did you have any questions for any of the board members about, anything in particular you'd like to know about the Environmental Conservation Board or anything that's going on?
I mean, kind of, but I think a lot of it could just be answered just by sitting in on the meeting. A lot of it was just how things run, but just seeing how it goes. I mean, that's what I'm most curious about is, just how it works.
Mhm.
Well, does anybody else have any other questions for Rocky at this time? Otherwise, Rocky will invite you to stay for the meeting. And, I think that maybe there would be another opportunity right towards the end of the meeting. If you have questions that have come up, maybe we can talk again, revisit just briefly then. And we just invite you to participate in the rest of the meeting with us and
Right.
watch the meeting. So,
Sounds good. Thank you.
thanks, Rocky. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Okay, so the next item would be the approval of the minutes from December the 3rd. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion relating to the minutes? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Okay, our next item here is privilege of the floor. Did anybody have a item that they would like to bring up that is not on the agenda, or anybody would like to address the Environmental Conservation Board? Okay, so we'll move right along to, and I know Justin is with us. Welcome, Justin. Hi, Justin. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Sorry, I'm on the phone and on the computer at the same time. I'm hoping I have one of them for connection at least.
Not a problem. Eric, let's jump over to report of the development office. Eric, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I was just renaming Justin's cell phone on there, so I know it's him talking. Well, the biggest thing, I suppose, is my leaving. And Doug, you've put out the position opening for somebody to fill this spot, and then there'll be a kind of transition into that. Don't expect any kind of service interruptions, let's say, in between now and the next month. We're going to keep everything flowing smoothly in between myself and the next planner that takes my role here. The CIC has been working diligently in reviewing the comprehensive plan. We'll do likewise in just a second. Essentially, the body of the text, the kind of existing conditions is generally done, and we're finalizing the goals and action steps, which is probably the same as where we were when we discussed this last month with the ECB. There's a few other projects. There's nothing really new to update. We're preparing for another meeting of the Middle Cheshire Road Corridor study, but we haven't held one since the last time we met. Same thing with the Route 332 and 96 corridor study. And also the Uptown study. There's nothing new to report with that one. So with that said, the CIC has requested that the applicable boards review the draft comprehensive plan and provide comments to them. So, the Ag Committee is going to review the Ag section. The Planning and Public Works Committee has started their review of the Infrastructure and Transportation section. And so they would like the Environmental Conservation Board's comments on the section relating to the natural environment. So we'll pull that up and work through that. There is a pretty long section here detailing the existing conditions. And then,
Hey, Eric, just maybe while you're pulling that up for Rocky and maybe anybody else, a copy of this is available through the town website, right? I believe there's a link right on the website.
yeah, there is. It's not going to have some of the same features right now because I haven't been able to load like the large document, but it's essentially all there. The only thing that's missing is like the links that I've been clicking on. But yeah, this document is all available for the public, for all of you guys to view on the town's website. There should be a section or a tab related to the comprehensive plan update. It's right in there. But if you guys have any difficulty finding it, shoot me an email and I'll get it to you.
Right.
Did anybody have trouble finding it or looking at it before the meeting?
Just finding time to look at it before the meeting.
Yeah. It's a big one. It's pretty, as the title would suggest, it is fairly comprehensive. But we're going to kind of narrow our focus here just to the natural resource and make it a little bit easier to tackle. The goal statements for the various ones were created through a public process. Essentially, we held a number of meetings. I think it was about 5 with the public to gather their input. We had about 100 attendees total through those meetings. And then we also had a survey that was running for about 3 months where we got 500 responses, 330 were complete responses to the survey. So through that, we developed these goals, and a lot of them use very similar language as the 2011 comprehensive plan. These are kind of our broad statements about what the town is going to do with regard to natural resources during the planning period, which is essentially the next 5 to 10 years. So the goal, as it states it, is the town will protect its natural resources and scenic views, which benefit the town and greater Canandaigua area, including Canandaigua Lake and its watershed. The town will support the conservation and maintenance of the land that provides critical open space and creates a network of linkages for wildlife habitat, stormwater management, scenic views, and active recreational trails. Is there any comment on the goal statement?
No.
You know, it's relatively broad, so we can cover a lot of things. And then the measurables are, the idea being, in order to know whether or not the goal is attained, trying to have standards by which you'll measure that success. So using the goal statement here, we tried to identify standards that might be able to check later on to see, you know, whether or not we had achieved this goal. So I've said this to every group that's reviewed it. So the measurables and the action items, again, came out of a public process, and they're relatively unedited. A lot of these are perhaps, they might need to be eliminated. That's fine. We're certainly not tethered to them. They haven't really been edited. On the same vein, there's probably some that aren't there that should be. So if you see anything where it's missing, let us know and we'll add it. So with that said, looking, you know, again, the goal we're trying to attain, do you guys find any of these measurables problematic? Or are they incomplete, or are there some that are missing from this?
Eric, the first one there, one of the I know, and I already provided you my comments, but just for a point of discussion here, I think it's a fantastic measurable. I'm not sure how we quantify it, but the other thing that I guess I just have a little bit of concern about, and it's definitely a great goal, great water quality, but the town of Canandaigua has 10.5 miles of shoreline, and the lake itself has 35.9 miles of shoreline. So we're only a third of the overall lake shoreline. So I'm not sure how the town of Canandaigua, certainly in the things that we do, could have an impact, but we're certainly not the only impact.
Right.
So I'm not sure how we incorporate that.
I think that measurable is at least partly drawn from the Canada Lake Watershed. I can never remember if it's the association or council.
Council, I think.
Yeah, what Kevin does. In
Council.
their comprehensive plan, a lot of the reports that they did, actually a lot of the narrative from the earlier existing conditions section is drawn from them. And they had taken, you know, water quality samples from different points throughout the lake. So, you know, where the water quality is measured is kind of up to them, unless we wanted to work with them on a specific study. And yeah, you're certainly right. The town doesn't control the entirety of it. And, you know, while water quality at a specific point might be bad, you know, a number of meters or feet away might be fine.
It is true too that our part of the lakefront is very densely populated, where other parts of it are not. So possibly the number of lawns that are being well fed along the lake shore in our part of the watershed is quantitatively different than where it's forest or farmland or the houses are farther away. It is a very hard thing to quantify, but it doesn't leave us with no responsibility.
Would it, another way to, and maybe a sub point under it or something, what would be your thoughts if we looked at maybe the tributaries that flow into Canandaigua Lake that are located geographically in the town of Canandaigua as a measurement point where we looked at those and the water quality associated with those tributaries that are feeding into Canandaigua Lake that are specifically in the town?
That'd be a good first step. I think the volume and origination of nutrients in Canandaigua Lake is which is another item under measurables, is probably encompassed within the studying the tributaries. That would pick up a lot of the possible nutrients from lawns, from dairy farms spreading manure, from soil erosion, from septic tanks. And that would certainly give us something more measurable.
What is being measured currently? What are they looking at? More organophosphates, or is there some specific?
Yes, organic material, all kinds of things.
Yeah, they measure salt levels in some cases.
Salt levels and oxygen, which decreases according to, you know, how much nutrients going in, whether you're finding nitrogen runoff from fields, from septic tanks, etc.
I know one of the things that we had talked about in the past, when it comes to tributaries, for instance, like the hamlet of Cheshire, and a load that may or may not be putting, is that Menteith Creek?
Yeah.
That goes from Cheshire down to the lake, and obviously that directly discharges into Canandaigua Lake in the town of Canandaigua. But you know, I believe from a conversation that I had with the DEC, that hasn't even been tested. It's not even on the list to be tested. So, you know, maybe there's some things like that that we could try to do to promote. And that's why I was thinking maybe the tributaries specifically, because any loading, I would think, again, I'm not somebody who's certified in all this. Edith, you would know a lot more about this than me, but it would seem like loading going into Menteith Creek would probably more than likely come from some location in the town of Canandaigua.
A lot of it, yes. And it would not only be the hamlet of Cheshire, it would be, but there's a lot of lakeshore lawns, and they are very close to the lake. The soil is very pervious, and they are, many of them, handled by companies that get paid according to how much fertilizer they put on, which is pretty sorry. So yes, the tributaries are tremendously important because they carry a concentration of, you know, manure, of wildlife droppings, of septic tanks, and so on. But it's, shoreline lawns are a place where we could do some real education, I think.
So that map showed the areas where they get their samples? At
least in this report.
Okay.
Yes, that's where they have traditionally sampled.
So it looks like, is that, well, no, Seneca Point, okay. Yeah. Menteith is north.
Hope Point.
I think it would be helpful for somebody to get some current information from the Watershed Association about where they routinely take water samples. I know there have been studies that they've, you know, there have been studies of 1 year or several years where they have taken a lot of samples, basically at the mouths of every creek, but those have been short-term studies where there was a report that came out at the end of it, and then after that there may be a lull in the whole sampling activity. So I believe Bruce Gilman was you know, studying this on a regular basis, but now he's retired, and I'm not sure between the Watershed Association and FLCC exactly what they're sampling, but we could find out and maybe incorporate that into this document.
Great point. That's a great point. How about the, does anybody on some of the other measurables, are there other things that we should touch on with some of the other, obviously you guys have put a lot of work into the natural resource inventory over the last few years and putting that together. The acres of NRI resources I see is listed.
Doug, I wrote an email about this, making a whole slew of suggestions about things that I thought would be more suitable to put on a list of measurables than the ones that are on there in the draft, which I think are generally a little too vague to actually be measured in a meaningful way. Yeah, there's the email. I mean, I don't mean for this to entirely supersede the other one, but this was just a few areas that I thought we actually could measure ourselves, or we could glean the information from measurements that somebody else has already taken. And these have more to do with development projects, or they have a lot to do with development projects and with actions that the town is taking through the planning board or the zoning board to control what's going on in the development world.
Yeah, that's those are great, Sarah Linda. These are all great. I'm wondering, how would everybody feel? I think, Sarah Linda, you've put these together very well. How would everybody feel if we took these and inserted these in these measurables? And then are there others that we should also still include or take out?
Well, going through the list, the ones that I thought really didn't make sense to include because they're outside of our control. I mean, the water quality of the lake overall was one, for exactly the reason that you mentioned, that we're only a little bit of it. But I think you have a good suggestion of measuring the water quality within the tributaries or just the section of the lake that is adjacent to the town or within the town. Does make some sense. The carbon footprint of the town, that's something, I don't know how on earth anybody's going to measure that. The same with the volume and origination of nutrients. I mean, you know, who's going to be able to come up with a clear, account of that? Or extent of sprawl, that's another one that's quite vague. Acres of NRI resources, that's something that you could maybe pull that information out of the open space plan or the NRI. But then what do you do with it? Because those documents don't get updated on a regular basis. So how that is measured, I think, is kind of tough. And same thing with acres of land cover. The only account of that we have now is based on a survey that was done back in something like 2005, and that hasn't been updated. So unless that is updated, then how is that going to be a useful measurable? So in fact, one of the things I put on my list was actually undertaking the updating of some of those things, which I think would be very useful.
I think that is in the action items. What does the other members of the board feel about, well, all of that? We'll try to take it one by one if we can, but so if everybody's okay with adding this stuff, Sarah Linda's suggestions, we can do that mostly. I think the agricultural land though should probably go in the agricultural section.
And this would replace the measurables which previously existed, or would fall under those in some way. It seems like some of these that Sarah Linda has could fall under those other measurable headings, but I share the concerns that the original list isn't very measurable.
Well, a question for all the measurables. I mean, is this stuff that we're looking to, I guess, is it provided elsewhere and we're looking to just gather the information, or is it, I'm sorry, I need to go through the comprehensive plan more or these items that we are going to take on as tasks ourselves and fund and do these studies. I mean, because they can be done. The carbon footprint, recently I sat in a couple things where certain towns are taking that upon themselves. So there is a template to use. It's quite intensive, figuring all that stuff out, and requires a lot of resources. Or is it kind of a combination of both of those, looking what other municipalities already have, consolidating that to what's going to work for the town, and then when we can, I guess, do our own studies on this via, I'm guessing through, we'll have engineering companies, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of these, unlike some of the other goals in the comp plan, a lot of these don't have data that's easily obtained. You know, like I can get census data for a lot of like the population stuff, but for a lot of the environmental information, it would require us or somebody in one of these instances anyways, Canada Lake Watershed Association, to do that. Scenic views is only done because of the NRI. We would have to kind of redo that later on. Same with the land cover, as Sarah Linda said. Flora and fauna, I don't know where that would come from, but we would probably have to do a survey. Acres of NRI resources probably also require some sort of survey work. Carbon footprint, you said like a larger program to study that. You have to look into the Canada Lake. It's not easily available. Extent of sprawl, you might be able to do that with GIS information that's pretty readily
that one
available
should
through
be
the,
pretty low-hanging
through
fruit.
the county. You just have to, as Sarah Linda said, it's not clearly defined, but you know how you measure what sprawl
Right.
is. We all kind of have an idea of what it is, but using the information through the county, you could probably do that as long as you had a definition of what sprawl is. Same
And
with
then I guess-
fragmentation, probably.
And then collecting all this information data, it'll be incorporated into, I guess, trigger points that require actionable items at some point. Or is
I
it
don't
just
know that
collecting
it's-
data?
Yeah, I think that it's more to allow feedback at a later point. It's not so much like if we reach, you know, whatever level of land cover type, then we'll undertake whatever action item. But to say that, you know, we've done, you know, whatever action items we are doing through this comprehensive plan, and the measurables have changed in, you know, whatever fashion, so that when these are updated or when the comp plan is updated in a number of years, we can say, you know, whether or not maybe it's been successful.
So the information will be there for them to make decisions. Okay.
Yeah, so think about the comp plan is traditionally 10 years. So think about even 4 or 5 years from now, you're sitting back and you're going through this and you're like, okay, where are we? And you look at the measurables and you're like, where have we achieved that or haven't we? That's why I really like Sarah Linda's list, because those are quantifiable items that we can look at and say, okay, have we achieved this or have we not? I was even, truthfully, I was kind of looking at that list that you have there in terms of the measurables. And I do think something relative to water quality should be in there, whether it's tributaries or whatever the case, but then maybe substitute the rest of those items. I was even thinking maybe substitute Sarah Linda's list for the rest of them. You could certainly add something in extent of sprawl. You could even talk about conservation, perhaps, and conservation and natural resources. But, you know, I think a lot of these items are just so vague. I think they'd be hard to measure.
Yeah, I mean, with water quality, I mean, it runs into like which receptors are you trying to accommodate for? Is it humans, fish, other wildlife, or all of the above? It needs to, you know, for that stuff, I mean, it'll depend on what you're monitoring for those different receptors and the pathways it'll be influencing them.
And that's where that would probably have to be further defined, maybe even in the action steps. You know, you could talk about water quality, you know, you could even look at some, okay, we have 4 swimming beaches on Canandaigua Lake. Were they able to be open the entire summer, or did they have to be closed because of blue-green algae? I mean, there's 100 different ways to look at water quality. So.
Well, those are certainly one of the valid measurements, all right. And it is important, you know, the property values along the lake there that are our tax base are highly dependent on water quality in the lake.
Yeah, and the same is true of the plant material on the bottom of the lake. There's a lot of you know, disappointment with this quality of swimming because of the amount of, you know, seaweed growing up in on people's beaches.
All you have to do is compare property values on, say, Skaneateles Lake and Honeyway Lake and see how much difference water quality makes.
Well, I would be willing to do a little research on what the current state of testing of water quality is. I mean, I can talk with Lindsay McMillan, the Watershed Association, and possibly she'll be able to tell me what the folks at FLCC are doing. And maybe I can draft up something that would incorporate that into a measurable, if it's only that the town will continue to work with these other groups and maybe do an annual report on the just our quadrant of the lake, and to what and encourage active measurements, whether they're within the tributaries in the town or just at off the mouth of the tributaries. I think that's the way they have done it in the past, is instead of going right into Menteith Creek or Sucker Brook or whatever and measuring it, they take a measurement that's in the lake, but close to the mouth of that creek. So you get a pretty good picture of what's coming out.
All right, Eric, is that enough on the measurables? Can we move on to are you planning to try to go through the action steps tonight also, or skim through those, or? Eric, I'm not sure if you're muted. Did you? And I apologize. You guys are gonna.
Sorry, no, I had to mute myself. Yeah, I'd like to go through it tonight if you guys feel we have time.
So let's see, how does everybody feel? Do you want to kind of go through these? It's 5:20, and I know you've got some referrals here this evening. Let me ask you this. Do you want to jump to the referrals and then come back to this? I think we need to get the referrals done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we come back if there's time.
Sure.
Sounds fine.
All right, Eric, so why don't we?
Just as a general question on this, with Eric, to what extent are you going to continue to, you know, head up this comprehensive plan thing, or is it going to be turned over to the new planner, or what's going to happen when you're gone?
Well, I'm going to try to, we should have most of the comments back from the different boards by the time that I leave. And I'm going to try to make all these comments or revisions before I go. So it should be in a more complete form by the time I leave. At that point, I mean, again, I'm still going to be the 22nd.
22nd of January?
Yes.
Okay.
So at that point, you know, I'll obviously turn it over, but I'm still going to be around part-time. I imagine that this will probably be one of the projects that I help with. You know, at the point that I turn it over, I kind of expect, but you know, it might take a little bit longer than this. It's kind of trended, but I expect we'll have a public hearing on it that the CIC is required to have before it goes to the town board. You know, there might be some comments from that will have to be changed and revised in the plan, and then it would go to the town board. for them to have their own public hearing on it before potentially adopting it. So what we're doing right now should be kind of the bigger, more major changes, being that it is as rough as it is. But Doug, correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I foresee.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
Well, there's the one thing from the ordinance committee. Just to quickly touch on this, it was on the ordinance committee's agenda for Monday, but they ran out of time and didn't get the chance to talk to it. It should be on their agenda for February as well. So this application for Battisti on Sandy Beach Drive, you all had seen previously, probably back in November. At the time, they were requesting a front setback variance for the setback from Sandy Beach Drive to the addition of the house, and also a lot coverage variance. That request was denied by the zoning board in November. In December, they provided some revisions back to the zoning board and submitted a request for rehearing. The zoning board granted that request in December, and so it will be held essentially as a new public hearing in January. They revised it again to eliminate the lot coverage variance by reducing the impervious area, the driveway there, to essentially match what they're adding here. So there'll be no net gain of impervious surface. They still need that lot coverage variance to the addition.
You mean the setback variance?
Excuse me, yes, setback variance.
And Eric, what's the percentage of lot coverage on the proposal? I missed that.
33.4. Right now it's at 33.9.
But they're increasing the building coverage. So there's one variance or two variances? I'm sorry, I missed that.
They're increasing the building coverage, but they're down from what's required. So they're under the 20% required. So it's just the one setback variance. The lot coverage variance, because lot coverage is being reduced and it's pre-existing nonconformity, code reads pre-existing nonconformities that are reduced shall be allowed. Something to that effect.
And at 19.9%, they meet the building coverage.
Right, they're pretty much right at the 20% that they're allowed.
Right. Do the ECB members have comments on this? And what's the code allow for lot coverage for this size parcel?
30%.
30%. So I know when you get into lot coverage and pervious pavement, one of the concerns is always water quality and the runoff. Have they considered any type of water quality? Do they have a rain garden? Do they have a roof leaders going in to capture some of the water? Do they have pervious pavers? I'm sorry, I just haven't looked at it in detail.
The big thing is just removing this gravel driveway that is there right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what keeps them under lot coverage. I don't think they're proposing to add anything further. They are raising the house to meet the floodplain requirements, but that's it. I don't think they're adding any infiltration areas.
When we reviewed this back in November, one of the recommendations or comments was that this plan did not identify any provisions for site drainage or any provisions for landscaping, and it also hadn't addressed the shoreline guidelines. In the revised plan, as far as I can see, they haven't responded to that other than to include a new statement from their architect saying, we're not making any changes to the shoreline, and therefore we don't believe that a shoreline guideline statement is relevant or necessary.
So would they, and Sarah Linda, I know I have up on my other screen here, I keep reading the stuff that you prepared, and thank you for doing that. And I know that you had a recommendation in there relative to requesting that. Should that be called out specifically in the ECB recommendation? How do people, how do the members feel? Would you like to request that shoreline guideline compliance be provided? Some sort of a statement?
Yes, and something about the landscaping and provisions for drainage ought to be there.
So John, is that something that you could do in terms of providing some wording for that if the ECB members chose to do that? How have you guys been handling that in the past? Has John been wordsmithing that for you, or do you provide the specific language?
Sarah Linda would word it up because she has the text already, and then Sarah Linda would send me a revised.
Okay, perfect. Wasn't sure how you were handling that. So, how do the other members feel? Are you in agreement with that?
I think they still need to address that drainage, say something about it, apply something. Since we kind of asked them before.
Oh, that's what the draft recommendation says. It's on the screen
Yeah.
here. We continue to recommend town attention to the drainage and landscape aspects. That doesn't say we have to see it again, just it's encouraging the planning and zoning boards to make sure that that happens properly. On the shoreline guidelines, I have kind of mixed feelings about this. I tend to agree with the applicant that if no work is happening on the lakeside of the building, I don't really see why they need to do a shoreline guideline statement. Maybe the rest
Well,
of
it's not an onerous, it's not a terrible burden to say we comply with those guidelines. Nothing has been changed. They ought to at least respond. I guess he
Yeah.
did say we haven't changed anything, so, but I
I
don't know.
mean, other
Seems
than
to be
saying that it doesn't apply, this doesn't apply, they should sort of respond in some manner.
Seems
Right.
rather dismissive.
Yeah,
And I think the planning board will want to apply the shoreline guidelines regardless of whether work is proposed there. In the past, they've kind of taken it upon themselves as like viewing the opportunities like this as sort of like a corrective action. Like, you know, the screening from the shoreline has kind of deteriorated to the point that now is an opportunity to require certain landscaping so that in the future it's more full and provides more screening from properties, regardless of whether changes are on the shoreline.
yeah.
Yes,
Well, if that's the consensus of the board, then we should add to the recommendation that we, that, you know, also application of the shoreline guidelines for additional landscaping on the lakeside of the building. And I can make that change and send it to John.
That sounded like a motion to me. Do we have a second? We'll move this along.
yes, Edith.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Bye.
opposed?
Bye.
All right, there's that one. Let's go to the next one here, Eric. Let me just ask, I didn't ask for discussion. Did anybody else have any other comments on that one? Okay, and then let's move to the next one here, Eric. So. This would be Chesson, 4847 County Road 16. Application for an area variance to replace an enlarged existing wood deck and build a screen porch on the lakeside of an existing house with a 52-foot setback as opposed to the required 60 feet. Steep slope area, it looks like, according to your information here, Sarah Linda, and no change in grading. So is it just a single variance again, Eric, with setback?
Right. Because they're not disturbing enough land to be considered, well, because they're not disturbing enough land, they don't hit the threshold of the steep slope requirements that would otherwise require them to go to the planning board. So it's just a single variance here for the setback to the lake. So this is what they're proposing, a new screened-in porch there, deck area here, which is, there is an existing deck, they're just expanding it a bit, and then a newly realigned staircase. This is the existing conditions. So, kind of see the outline of where the deck is right now.
Eric, could you pull up from the assessor's office, the photographs of what this looks like from the lake? Just to see what the condition is on the steep slope going down, if there's a lot of vegetation there or if it's clear.
Sorry. So.
Looks like there's some good sized trees there. And they're not proposing to make any change to that. So I didn't see any problem with this. Well, it is a expansion of the deck. It certainly is, way up high above the lakeshore and is not going to have any effect on adjacent properties or really on the appearance from the lakeside. They do need to be careful about erosion control as they're excavating the holes for the foundation, but we've got good, strong standards for that.
Okay, that sounded like another motion. Does anybody, do we have a second?
Oh, can I just ask one question
Oh,
on that real quick?
Sure.
Just when it becomes like a covered deck area like that, and I guess it's extending out more, I guess, where does the height get measured from? I mean, is that something else they have to worry about since it's now a covered structure in the back for a height variance or anything?
No, it doesn't change the average finished grade surrounding the foundation of the building. And it's not like a new peak for it. So it's not a new peak height that would.
Right.
So it would have no effect on the building height for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a second on the motion by Sarah Linda?
I'll second.
Perfect. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Pass that recommendation along. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. Okay. Thank you, Sarah Linda. We'll pass that recommendation along. And Eric, your next one here, Fletcher, requesting single stage subdivision to create a new lot, it looks like.
Give me 1 second while I pull it up.
Subdivision approval to create lot number 1 at 6.4 acres and lot number 2 at 254 acres. Subdivision is for inheritance purpose only, no major development intended. Subdivision is to comply with the will of Eleanor Fletcher. This is 6270 County Road 32.
Yeah. So you can kind of see it from this location map, but this is County Road 32 running down there. There's the town line of Bristol border, and then there's Fisher Hill Road right there. As Doug just said, this person, Stephen Fletcher, his mother passed away, and in the will, it said that she wanted to divide the land up amongst Stephen and his brother. So one parcel inside this one with the houses and other structures, along with some other property that's in the town of Bristol, would go to Stephen. And then this other lot at about 260 acres would go to his brother. This one over here, lot 2, is Sarah Linda has pointed out in her draft comments, scores pretty high on the protection ratings from the open space plan. It's got a stream and some wetlands and floodplain kind of flowing through the center of it. They don't have any plans for that area. Sorry, what?
Just wanted to mention, Justin wrote up the draft for this one.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. It's Justin had said. But no plans proposed for this area.
No plans
All the
for
lots.
development anywhere, right?
Right.
Which is excellent for that parcel. Yes.
And the subdivision, really, the natural subdivision point here is the road, correct, Eric? This is the one where it's just subdividing the portion off to the west.
Right. Yep. The road is dividing one.
So what's happening here is this 6 point whatever parcel, acre parcel is now part of the larger farm parcel that is the rest of it in the town of Bristol. And is that what's happening, or?
They might be deeded together, but the tax parcels delineate where the border of the two towns is.
So
So
the 6 acre parcel would be a standalone parcel. Obviously, the tax rate is different in the town of Canandaigua and the town of Bristol, so it would have to be its own separate parcel.
Oh, so just to make sure I understand what's going on here, the 6 acres is now part of the same parcel as the land on the other side of the road.
Yes.
And what they're doing is splitting the two pieces so that this parcel on the west side of the road can go with the rest of the farmland that's in Bristol. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're using the road as the subdivision line, basically. So the larger parcel to the east would be one parcel, the smaller parcel to the west would be a parcel, and then theoretically, the owner of the parcel in the town of Bristol would also own the smaller parcel to the west.
Right.
So, Justin, did you have other comments relative to the recommendations that you wrote for this one?
No, more or less, it was just to point out what a unique property it was over there. And in reviewing, I guess, the plans, just, you know, in the future, this is something that would make sense for like the PDR, just because it scores so relatively high and because of its historical, I guess, agricultural and environmental benefits that it provides the town, as well as being in the view shed that's been identified in the plan as well. You know, we just wanted to make that point, I guess, in our comments and recommendations, that everybody's aware of that.
Justin, was that a motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
All right, any other discussion on the recommendation relative to this application?
Edith, you looked at the soils, right?
Yes.
Is this, I mean, is the soils here, if you see it's erodible, is it good for agriculture?
If it's done right, it is. It's mostly, a lot of it is, there's a lot of woods. Mostly it's only at risk if it's done carelessly or if there's a great deal of logging or something going on.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, curious.
That parcel's been in that family for a couple of generations, I think.
Wow.
So
Way more than
They're-
a couple of generations.
Yeah.
That's been
long
in
time.
something like 10 generations of that.
Yeah,
family.
okay.
Wow.
Well, I was only acquainted with Pete Fletcher, so, and the sons, so I knew it went back a ways. So they
No,
have
ask
taken very
Ray
good
Henry
care of
about
it.
It goes all the way back to Zadok Hun, who was one of the earliest settlers, and his family has owned it ever since.
Wow.
Yes,
Well,
well,
something must
they've
go
taken
on.
very good-
Architecturally, it's also it's significant too, because it's got these two houses that are both, possibly pre-1850, and it's got a whole slew of farm outbuildings, all as a very intact complex there. So, I mean, this has got to be one of the farmsteads that's, up there on the list of important farm properties.
Well, they've been taking very good care of it for a long time. So I'm sure they will continue as long as they can.
In light of the comments that you both just made, would the members of the UCB want to consider making a recommendation to the planning board, and for the record, as part of your recommendation, that maybe the applicant consider maybe conservation protection, PDR program or otherwise?
I think that'd be great. Yeah.
Well, that's in the recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay.
Well,
Maybe it would be a good idea for somebody to formally write a letter to Peter Fletcher or Stephen Fletcher, whichever one's gonna, or both of them, to make that point.
Stephen has talked to me about potentially doing a PDR on it. But it's just a matter of furthering that conversation. 'Cause they're not interested in doing anything with it. And, he said something to the effect of that they're holding on to it while his son or his brother's son maybe goes to college later on. They might be interested in using that funding or whatever to support his college education. So it's potentially something that they're interested in.
it'd be great.
Sounds good. Okay, so we have a first and a second, I believe. I don't know that we've voted on this one yet. Any other discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor of forwarding this recommendation on this application, the Fletcher application, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, no. All right, so we'll forward this one on. Eric, I believe is that the end of the referrals?
Yep.
Jumping back to my agenda here. Okay, looks like the next item on the agenda is old business. I did see the article in the January newsletter. Thank you so much for doing that and taking care of that, Pat. I know that you were working on that. And Pat, you are, I believe, it looks like you're tentatively volunteered to do the newsletter article for February and March also.
Well, with the help of a volunteer of folks sitting among me here, Gary had an interesting suggestion of the problem with plastics. I kind of like that. We need a topic for February, and we were gonna just chat about that real quickly. I had said to Gary that I was on a site with Rocco, my husband, and the homeowner had land a shoreline of Canandaigua Lake, and she was concerned about all the junk that was coming up upon her shore, litter and plastics being within that group of litter. So, they're a problem in our own lake. So perhaps that would be something, interesting to explore, incorporating Canandaigua Lake in with it, and of course our town.
I'd be happy to do that for February.
For February, yeah.
not a winter topic. I think you were
No,
looking.
it's not a winter topic, but I don't know if we have to be seasonal. I mean, we could shake it up, I suppose. But it's very interesting to me. What do you all think about that topic?
It reminds
To
me,
address it. Mhm.
it reminds me of how a lot of like the break walls, because you know those beaches, the stuff can't be deposited on them. It just kind of builds up until it hits certain properties. You know, maybe they have riprap, whatever, that it can drop all this junk on.
Yeah,
And so for the people that don't have it, it makes it worse and worse.
it is. Some people do have the break walls and some people don't. And if they don't, then their shoreline is a collector.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
If you need some data relative to, you know, I don't know if you want to incorporate anything in the article relative to plastics and recyclables and that sort of stuff. Caitlin here in the highway department would have a ton of data and information that I'm sure she'd be willing to share
Yeah.
with you.
that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah. Okay.
So plastics it is.
When do you need that?
I think by about the 20th or so of January, about 10 days before the end of the month, Gary, if
Okay,
that's doable.
sure.
That's so Sarah can, you know, we'll all look through it. It's about a 500 word or so general limit, and then maybe some pictures, some inserts. So just to give about a week to review it before it goes in the newsletter.
Ready,
That work for you?
sure.
All right, well, that's February.
And Pat, did you want to touch on March while we're talking about it here?
Sarah Linda and I had talked a little bit about, Sarah Linda had an interesting topic about birding and about writing about an app that people who are into birding can learn how to use. That coming into springtime sounded like that would be an interesting topic for kicking off spring.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that for May.
May,
because
okay.
May is- That's the time when all the birding goes nuts. So
Okay.
that would be ideal.
Well, I had a couple ideas. One was about talking about trees and tree canopies and the importance of trees. You know, when we're reviewing projects and we're seeing folks wanting to maybe take down established old trees and do new plantings, and, you know, what is affected by, you know, the suggestion or process of taking down trees. We have to be environmentally conscious about it, do it properly or not at all, or replace what comes down with several, you know, of the same kind. Maybe a tree topic might be something of interest.
I think that would be a good one to do some instruction on tree planting, because people are in general planting trees at that time of the year.
Right.
And there are things that will help them thrive and things that will make you be replacing them in a few weeks.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of planting more than one in a, you know, planting a group together because of the mycorrhizae and the support that, you know, trees naturally grow in groups instead of one here and one there. And the whole mulching and the depth and how big the tree planting hole needs to be and all of that, I think would be really,
right.
and maybe some emphasis on native species instead of exotics.
Is anyone interested in taking that one on?
When would you like that one done? I could do it.
I would think, Edith, typically just, you know, about 10 days before the end of the month.
Okay, which
So
month?
for March,
That's
maybe third week of February.
Okay, I will try to get that done. I will, just
If
as
I
a
can
note,
help you,
I'm-
I certainly be happy to.
okay, well, I can, I will be, the thing is that I may be out of town for a bit. I certainly will have my computer with me though, so I can do that.
Mhm.
I have to
Mhm.
have surgery on a foot,
Mm.
and my daughter, who is the RN, lives in Hawaii. So I have a choice of either going to Hawaii, where she
That would be just terrible. I
or
think you should
being
go
at
there.
home, or being home with and being unable to drive and nobody else here, which is not too attractive. So
All those in favor of moving the ECB meeting with Edith? So,
Hawaii.
For it.
oh, this daughter is so bossy. She will take excellent care of me.
Well, then you should go for it.
Well, yes.
That's
The
cute.
thing is that I can't really schedule it until I know more about how the COVID pandemic is going to play out.
Right, right. Well,
Well,
let's see how it goes, and that could tentatively be
tentatively, I will deal with March and tree planting and go with that.
And if worse comes to worse, Joyce and I were talking before Christmas time. There are so many wonderful articles in our newsletters through previous years. If we ever need to revisit a topic because we think it's worth another presentation, we can always kind of borrow it from 2017 or whatever,
Right. Mhm.
We do have a lot of good stuff that we could reflect on or revisit, if need be.
Mhm.
absolutely. That's a great idea. That's a great
Yeah.
idea. Because so often, the newsletter has so many articles in it that it's hard for people to really take it all in and digest it all. So sometimes bringing something back around, that's not a bad idea. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing here, the town hall display case. Edith, I don't know if you have anything on that or not. The situation with the COVID situation right now, I don't know how many.
Nobody's seeing it
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah.
No.
Well, I put up the footprints in the snow thing, and I think probably 2 or 3 people have looked at it. I was thinking I would try to change it seasonally, and when spring comes along, maybe, do some birds or whatever. Again, it's going to kind of depend on how I can schedule the foot surgery. I don't know.
Mhm.
I would think one of the things I would like to have, if people are back in the town hall again, is something that would show them what an egg mass from a spotted lanternfly looks like, and what a spotted lanternfly looks like itself in the various instars. These are a serious threat to the vineyards, to ornamentals, to all
Mhm.
kinds of things. And, and I would like to show them what a tree of heaven, what an ailanthus tree looks like, because those are a host for the spotted lanternfly, which our Spring Hill Cemetery is full of these trees, by the by.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes. So I think sometime we need to emphasize that, because they are a really serious threat to agriculture here.
Edith, one of the things that's happening right now, and it's twofold. So this is tax bill season. So people are starting to come into the town hall to pay their tax bills. And we have it set up as a one-way in, one-way out. And what's happening is people are coming in the front door, and there's arrows and there's signs to direct them to come in, pay their tax bill, and then exit out the hallway going right past the display case.
Oh.
So it is seeing
Mhm.
more traffic than what it may otherwise. But
Oh, well,
the other
that's
thing, speaking of that issue, is maybe we want to, and we can certainly print them here, if we had some sort of little flyer handout, we could also have right there next to the display case that maybe people would grab on their way out, since they're walking by it anyway.
All right, I can undertake to make a spotted lanternfly flyer if you would like. It is a very serious threat, and they have been detected locally. So, showing people what they might be looking at would be helpful, I would hope.
Mhm.
Sure,
They've been
we can-
located in the town? Or
In the area, they have, most of the ones that they've found in New York State have, there is a map on DEC's website if you want to take a look. I don't think there's been anything in the town, but they fly and they lay eggs on stuff that gets transported. And they're not terribly noticeable until they are overwhelming. And we do have lots of tree of heaven, ailanthus trees around. So we have orchards, and we have vineyards, and we have little small grapevines, etc. They are death on fruit trees and vineyards. And they come in overwhelming numbers once they get established.
So Edith, if you want to do the flyer, I'd certainly offer, we could certainly print that here and
Okay.
have
Well,
some here available for people.
Yeah, I will do that. I think
Yeah, that'd be great.
that would all we can do is try, but I will do a flyer.
All right, perfect.
Sooner better than later. Okay.
Sounds good. So the next thing here on the agenda, vacancies on the ECB. So we do have 2 vacancies currently on the ECB. We have renewed our advertising for both a chair as well as a vacancy. Actually, I guess let's take a second here. I think Rocky's still with us. Rocky, now that you've sat through some of the reviews, have you run away yet, or are you still wanting to talk to us? Or
No, I'm still here.
Oh, you're a brave man.
any thoughts or comments or questions after kind of sitting through the meeting here tonight?
I mean, I was just looking at these referrals, and I'm just curious, what's the biggest source for the referrals? Like, where do the most referrals come from, I guess?
Development along the lake.
Okay.
We have pretty high thresholds, or excuse me, I guess low thresholds for the amount of disturbance that would trigger site plan approval in the residential lake district. So where, like, essentially any land along the lake, you only have to disturb 5 cubic yards or 500 square feet, where there is no similar threshold in the remainder of the town. You either have to be building upon a vacant parcel, which a lot of instances there's no environmental features, and so it's not triggered to go to the planning or the Environmental Conservation Board. So in short, it's usually something in the residential lake district.
Okay, thank you.
Rocky, and another answer to your question is these applications get referred to us if they're going to the planning or zoning boards, and then it triggers one of those thresholds that Eric mentioned. Then they want us to look at it first and give them our take on whether we like it or we don't like it, and what are our concerns. So that's where they come from.
Thank you.
Other questions, Rocky? Any other thoughts or comments?
I mean, not really. It was pretty straightforward. I see. Did you say there were 2 openings?
Yes.
I know a local scientist that would like to be involved. If that's okay, I can pass along her information. I went to NAS with her, and I
That'd
went
be
to law
great.
school with her. But I know she'd be interested too, if that's okay.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. Pass, please pass
Yeah.
along.
I
That'd be
can
great.
email you some contacts.
Does anybody else have any questions or anything for Rocky before we let Rocky go? No? Okay, Rocky, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you
Thank you
taking the
so
time
much.
here
Yes,
tonight.
thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Just kind of wrapping up here, we've got member reports. I don't know if anybody has anything specifically they wanted to share under.
Let me just say a few things about gypsy moths, favorite topic. So kind of unlike the lanternfly, this is well established, at least this past spring for us. And there's been some questions about treatment at Ononda Park. Sarah Reynolds has kind of fielded some of the questions about that, and the DEC has also weighed in on things. You know, unfortunately, the DEC does not support spraying. It would be something if we were going to proceed with aerial spraying, it would have to presumably come out of the town's budget somehow. You know, I've talked to some, a Forest Service entomologist actually has more experience in dealing with the gypsy moths to kind of get their thoughts on treatment, spraying. And you know, they all speak to doing these egg mass surveys where you, and if anybody's hiked in Ononda in the past 9 months, you've seen these, you know, scoops of peanut butter, apparent egg masses everywhere. But counting those in designated areas throughout the park, and you can then calculate how many egg masses per acre. And that value correlates well with subsequent defoliation when all these critters hatch in the following spring. And also some correlation with actual tree mortality. I have spoken with one of the faculty environmental sciences at Flick, Maura Sullivan. Some of you might know her, and she would be interested in getting a couple students to actually go and do these egg mass surveys. So that would provide us data to look at and may help with making decisions about spraying, or at the least, if we were to proceed with aerial spraying, to see what the impact of that is in a subsequent year to repeat the egg mass surveys. You know, the cost, and you might already know some of this, I've heard $60 an acre is what this flying service, which is somewhere in central New York, would be charging residents. And apparently there's quite a few folks who have already signed up for this to be done on their own. So I guess the question is whether this is something we would want to pursue for Ononda. The biocontrol that they use is something called BTK, and it's been around for 30, 40 years. Again, Edith probably knows more about this than I do, but it seems relatively safe. It discards Lepidoptera, so it's going to take out butterflies and moths, but it doesn't affect vertebrates, doesn't affect any warm-blooded creatures. What they spray is the spores and the endotoxin, which is produced by this bacillus. But I don't think there's, fortunately, there hasn't been a lot of experience with gypsy moths in the past few decades, but probably something we need to make a decision about, at least with regards to Ononda.
Gary, let me ask you, you said $60 an acre. Is that the price for the company or for the interns to?
That would be the charge that this and they're called Rebecca Lynn Flying Service. That is their charge for the spraying. And I don't know if that's would be negotiable with a large tract.
And let me ask you this. So I know one of the things that I personally witnessed at Ononda this year, in particular on the lake side, and I'm sure it was on the uplands also, but on the lakeside, obviously, is not as forested, but we have some large older trees. And I saw a lot of these egg masses on the buildings, on the cabins, on the trees themselves. is there any right or wrong if we did focused on starting with the lakeside and then move to the uplands? And I guess the other question that I heard, because I've heard so much about this, and some of the times it seems like it conflicts a little bit. You know, I've heard this thing about that theoretically your trees could survive the first year, but possibly not a second year onslaught. And should we be doing something now in preparation for a possible second year? Can you just comment on that?
Well, the timing of the spraying is very critical. It has to be in the early instars, the early hatchlings from the egg masses. So, May to June, and it's usually just a one-time spraying which takes place. And there is a natural enemy for the gypsy moth. And what happened this past year was so dry that the fungus, which normally kills them, just never developed. So it's a bit of a gamble. This coming year, we might have a very wet spring, and the fungus may thrive and take care of the gypsy moths. But do you want to take that risk given change in our climates and maybe the probability that we're going to have another bad year? But again, these egg mass surveys, that I think that data will be helpful. My suspicions are pretty high. Edith, you might have some comments about how along the lakefront how to handle things with those big trees and all the egg masses in the buildings.
From what I know of the cost of aerial spraying, that is a very reasonable amount of money for one thing. That's much less than I would have anticipated. I think the more information we have, getting the survey would be an excellent start. For my money, if you'd find any of them on the buildings and all that, scrape them off for heaven's sakes,
Yeah.
Go after what you can reach and take care of what you can get to. The upland is certainly much more problematic,
Right.
but that is quite a reasonable cost.
Yeah. So this person who does this is going to use the Canandaigua Airport as their staging area.
Yeah.
They have these tractor aircraft, they call them, which can carry a huge load of this material.
Mm-hmm.
They fly at tree level. It's going to be an interesting thing to observe.
BT's been around a long time. It is perfectly safe for people, for pets, for whatever. It does unfortunately take out some things that you would just assume keep, but nevertheless, if the trees go down, those won't have any habitat either. So
yeah.
And I know from sitting in on some of these seminars on it, they also, recommend reaching out to neighbors to pool the resources. And I don't know if that's something we'd want to do to put it out there, since they'd be coming in there, if cost is an issue, to reduce that by having multiple landowners. I know we've been looking into it because it's so bad on our property, and hundreds of them going for hiking trips on the property. I mean, it's a problem everywhere in the town. So.
Yes, I think opening it up and saying, you want to be part of this project if we decide to do it would be a really good thing.
Well, maybe that's a good subject for the March newsletter, because that would be good timing, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Let me ask you a general question. You as the ECB members, do you support this concept of us exploring this further and moving forward with possible aerial spraying, especially at Ononda?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think if we do have that little study done down there, I mean, you could pretty much extrapolate that out to the town, because it's probably going to be similar densities to what we're seeing everywhere else. That would kind of give you a ballpark of what's going on.
Gary, are you in contact with the students? Is there something that you would need for us, or could they just go ahead and do it? Or
Yeah, Sarah volunteered her time to help support Maura and her students. Because they're off right now, things are not going to get going apparently until the beginning of February for them. That They probably won't do the survey until early March. Hopefully that's not going to be too late. I can reach out to the flying service, the sprayers, just to kind of see how much forewarning they need. Not committing to anything, but kind of feel them out. And I can also, per Justin's comment, whether or not, increasing their volume would help defray some of the costs.
Okay. All right, maybe that's something that we can touch on again, or we could even email each other. Maybe we need to ask for a special meeting, even relative, and maybe we could have a joint meeting of the ECB and the town board or something. If it's $60 an acre, Ononda's 80 acres, so we're talking about approximately $5,000. So,
Yeah.
Yep. So, okay.
And if you need any examples for the display case to go with the spotted lanternfly, I will be happy to donate some to the cause.
I've got my collection too.
Okay, well, that's true. That might be even better thing for the display case. Those are just supremely ugly, though.
We can jazz it up a bit. They'll have those pretty spotted lanternflies right next to them.
Okay, is there anything else we need to touch on this evening? Well, it seems like there was a lot on the agenda here this evening. Did you want to have any further conversation relative to the vacancies and with Rocky Palomini? Do you want to consider appointing him? Do you want to wait a couple of meetings and see what else? Just kind of any thoughts or comments on that?
Well, he certainly has a lot of background in legal matters and interest in environmental things. So as old as I am, I think some young blood would be good.
I didn't catch it earlier.
Background would be complementary too. Just it's a different set of, I guess, ideas and where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm. He just passed the bar, Justin. So he's been through law school and
Yep.
all of that. So.
What are his plans for the next year even? Is he going to stay in the area, or is he, I assume he's looking for a job at some firm?
Actually, he's, I don't know if he said that, but I talked to him briefly on the phone. He's working at the big law firm of Palomini Law on South Main Street in Canandaigua, working with his father. So planning on being right here in Canandaigua. So.
Soon to be Palomini and Son.
Yes.
Right.
Is that the restaurant branch of the Palomini's or the mayoral branch of the Palomini's?
Actually, it's the restaurant branch. The restaurant would have been his grandfather.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
Well, in light of the fact that we've been operating with one vacancy for a whole year, I'd say anybody who's interested, let's put them on.
I would say so too.
And hope we get another one soon.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead, if somebody would be willing or to consider making a motion to that effect? I will take care of that. The town board is going to meet on January 29th. We can take care of that prior to your next meeting.
Yes, so move. Let's appoint them or recommend them for appointment.
The other times when we've had vacancies and interviewed people, we had several to choose from. And this time around, I'm not sure what's different, why we haven't had candidates, but do you think it makes sense to maybe go back to some of those people who expressed an interest 2-3 years ago and contact them and see if they might consider it now? I don't have anybody particularly in mind, but there were some there that I thought were, you know, would be okay.
I know that Sarah did do that. We went back and looked and we re-notified some of those individuals that we did have some vacancies and that we were looking, because it wasn't only the Environmental Conservation Board, we had some vacancies with the Planning Board and the Zoning Board and et cetera. Happy to do it again. We can reach out and see if there's anybody else out there that still might be interested. I really wonder if COVID is having an impact this time around, where people maybe have just realigned priorities and maybe just aren't as either as available with children being at home a lot of the times instead of at school, or if it's other things that are keeping them busy right now. We're kind of seeing that across the board, truthfully. It's not
Yes.
just TV, so.
Good point.
Okay, we do have a motion for that. Do we have a second for him?
I'll
Second,
second.
All right, any other discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so we'll take care of that. Is there any other business for this evening? The action steps. Do you want to, in light of time, it's going on 6:30, do you want to provide maybe emails, written comments to Eric, or would you prefer to go through these? What's your preference? Don't everybody get all excited at once.
A
email
little
comments.
extra, 15 more minutes or so. I mean, how much can we do in 15 minutes? A few things.
So is there one page, Eric? Is it one page?
I think so. I think that we,
Eric, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just as a side note, are we having a problem with the Agriculture Committee being able to get started?
sorry, I thought I had muted myself. I don't know. I mean, I thought we had sent it to him, but, oh, I see what you're saying right now. Yeah, probably if they were supposed to start at 6.
I'm trying to, and I'm sorry, you guys, I'm just trying to start that meeting in another.
Running 2 weeks.
All right, I'm going to drop off for just a second. I'll be right back. You guys continue. Eric, you are the host, right? So if me
Yeah,
leaving,
it should be
it'll
fine.
be okay. So,
So, yeah, it should just be the one page was the question. So we can work through these, you know, real quickly one by one if you guys want, or if there's anything that you guys saw that you are adamant that we point out immediately.
I guess it would be the ones that were just identified as responsible entities, right? That we should more or less concern ourselves with.
Maybe those responsible entities were, you know, they're subject to change, of course,
Yeah.
and the format will likely change too. So it'll say like a primary responsible entity and then like secondary responsible entities.
And how does this column of importance get dealt with? Is that something somebody else does at the end or what?
If you guys want to suggest what ones you think are important, that's fine. Otherwise, the CIC will fill them in as they see fit.
Oh. Well, one
Well, I mean,
suggestion,
sorry, I was just going to say, would the importance be based off of what we find, I guess, when we start collecting the data and information, and based on those, that would be the determiner, I guess, for the importance of these?
No. So, you know, it's going to be a bit subjectively based on which ones you foresee might have the biggest impact, and also maybe which ones are the easiest to get done. You know, if you can make a big impact with an easy step, it might be the most important. But it kind of depends on a little bit what you guys are feeling. and of course, based on reason and your guys' knowledge of environmental planning.
And these aren't specifically connected with goals or measures? Is that, these are kind of standalone, or do they fall under, or?
They're not specifically related to measurables.
Okay.
Although I think when the word developed, we had already, so like in the meeting, we would have already done the measurables. And so some people may have had in their mind, like, okay, if this is what we're measuring, how might we impact that in a beneficial direction? However, they are related to the goal of the comprehensive plan. So, you know, if we had this goal in mind, the action steps are how do we accomplish that goal? What can we do?
Yeah, because I think of things as, you know, you establish a goal, you come up with your action plan, and then your measurement. So, but
Well, Eric, shouldn't some of these action steps possibly at least be tweaked a little bit based on the measurables that we said earlier that Sarah Linda put together? I wonder if we need to go back and tweak some of these.
They can be. I think both the goals and the measurable, or excuse me, both the action steps and the measurables are more related to the goal than they are each other.
Okay.
I don't know. I think the order is maybe it would be advantageous to change the order, because you've got the goals first. And then if the next thing is the action steps, which are in service of those goals, then you have the measurables. The measurables are what will allow you to evaluate your action steps and see whether the action is in fact having any effect.
The order that it comes in doesn't change any of that, though. That's already stated in this, that's the use of the measurables.
I'm not sure I follow that.
Changing the order that they appear within the comprehensive plan doesn't change the use that they're there for. That's already stated above.
It's actually on an earlier page of the document that it spells out. I don't know if you want to, page 102, Eric. Online. Yeah, there you go.
So it seems to me that they should be connected to each other. I mean, if you're recommending action steps, the whole point of the measurables is to evaluate whether, I mean, you might want to use the measurables to evaluate what the extent of your problem is to start with. But then as you've got this 10-year period going on, you want to use your measurables to determine whether you're making any progress, and whether whether the action steps are the right ones, or whether the action steps are doing any good. So I think it would make a lot of sense to have them linked.
Okay.
I mean,
What does that mean for this plan then? Does it change the order that they show up in? Should they just be considered linked, which of course they are?
I mean, maybe it would be clearer if they were numbered. So you had your action steps numbered, and then you could also put the measurables in and put the same numbers on, so that it would be clear that, you know, let's say,
Yeah, I don't see why.
I don't know, hard to make it hard to.
The only trouble I see with doing that is then you have theoretically, because again, our goal right here is not to implement the action steps, it's to identify the action steps. And then whether it's the CIC or another group or whoever the responsible entity will have to implement them, and they're going to have to determine an order. So that's always the concern I have about like numbering action steps, because then you may say, well, this is the first priority. Well, who's made that decision that that's the first priority versus a second or third? I do think though that I really do believe the action steps are probably going to need to be tweaked a little bit based on those measurables that we just added. Like, I don't have that list in front of me right at the moment, but some of the items that I think you listed there, Sarah Linda, like for instance, even the first one, just take acres of land with high conservation value purchased for public use. So there probably should be some sort of action step to determine, well, first of all, maybe to promote the lands with natural resource significance. And then the measurable would be to determine, whether or not we've achieved that. Or maybe to promote the program, or even determine which, we kind of have the documents, we kind of have the ag plan, we kind of have the open space plan that's already identified the primary lands that we should be looking at. But then taking that next step of going after to try to get those lands with those premium natural resources that we should be protecting. Or even the woodland you've got down there a little bit later, or agricultural land, loose to residential. Some of those, Eric, some of those measurables that she listed may also actually be able to be action steps themselves. With a little bit of.
Yeah. Certainly, like, I think I thought I saw one earlier. Updating the zoning ordinance. I'm not sure that's a measurable so much as it is an action item.
Well, one specific tweak I would suggest is on number 2 here under action steps, acquisition by the town of lands. I'd modify that to say acquisition of ownership or conservation easements. Because that's been identified all over the place as a method of protection there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sarah Linda. I actually had crossed out the word acquisition and put protection, because there's a variety of ways we can protect, whether it's acquisition or conservation easements or whatever. We don't actually have to buy it either. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good thought. So that would be the action step, and then the measurable will be, okay, how many acres did we actually protect?
Yeah, there's one down there, the CLWC plan. Again, this is the town's comprehensive plan. And so, yes, we can work with them, we can support them, but we can't actually implement their plan. So maybe that just, collaborate with CLWC to implement their plan or something. I don't know, but.
Well, put support instead of implement.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that would be an easy way.
Another action step might be to partner with the Finger Lakes Land Trust or other nonprofits in land protection. I mean, it's something that we're already doing, but we could do it to a greater extent. And it's measurable.
I know we talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about the measurables. The one relative to the carbon footprint, I think we took the carbon footprint out of the measurables. I also wonder if we take that out of, where did I just see that? It's one of these action steps. Yeah. I wonder if we scrap that action step. And truthfully, as I don't know whether or not the town board would vote and support having that in there. I get a little bit of mixed messaging on their stance, to be 100% honest with you, relative to that. I think part of that is because it's so hard to quantify and measure how in the world we would do something like that.
how do they feel about promoting renewable energy in the town?
I think they're on board with that. We've done things like the solar law. We did things like we changed the industrial zoning to allow solar in agriculture. I think they're relatively supportive of the concept. Again, though, how do you do that? Maybe it's different if the goal is to reduce the town's operations carbon footprint versus the town's collectively everybody carbon footprint.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of towns have focused on that, what the town infrastructure has control over, as opposed to the populace.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a stretch goal too, or a stretch step with the whole carbon footprint. But I mean, it can be also just educating the general public of the town to what it is, how they can take steps to reduce it, as well as what the town itself could be doing. I mean, I know it's a big idea and stuff to digest, but I don't think it's a bad idea to have it in there. I mean, because it is becoming more normalized and more everywhere. So I know there will be questions about it.
Are there any others that anyone wants to touch on? Eric, do you have enough to go on based on this conversation to kind of tweak some of these a little?
Yeah, and I think you have provided substantial comments too on this one, so.
And we're still very much in this process. So if we end the meeting and you think of something, please feel free to email Eric, because we're still in this process of going through these.
Right.
Sounds good.
There was one comment Gary made in an email that I thought was a good suggestion on the measurables, and that is to the visitation at the town parks and use of town trails, if that's something that is measured. Those would be good things to.
We have that in the Parks and Recreation section.
I know I saw it somewhere.
Okay, well, yeah, if you guys have anything else, I'm sure as you continue to do your own reading, you'll come up with some other items or anything, so let me know and we'll make those changes.
I'm just looking at the agenda here. The last section is future training opportunities. And then does anybody else have anything else for the order? If not, we could entertain a motion to adjourn if you're ready.
So moved.
Yeah.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Everybody, Happy New Year. Thank you again. Thanks for taking so much time today to go through all this stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Chat with
Thank
you
you.
soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank
Yeah,
you all.
right.
Hey, everybody.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye all.